Ferguson may be leading the points battle, but he's been achingly close to a win in the first 2 rounds. There's little doubt he'll be trying to correct that today at Daytona, but the results at this roval can be notoriously hard to predict. Will luck swing his way? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 3 of the PRL GT3 series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is DJ Clark. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Crackers Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Daytona's road course almost always provides great racing, but has a unique set of challenges. Let's head to our track guide to find out more. Welcome to the Daytona International Speedway. While many oval fans associate this Central Florida track with mainly NASCAR, the road course has gained just as much worldwide fame thanks to it hosting motorcycles and sports cars for decades. In fact, the flagship road race, the 24 Hours of Daytona, has become a major draw for drivers of all disciplines, many eager to have a go at endurance racing. The stats make this place sound relatively simple, with 12 corners on the regular road circuit and 14 on the NASCAR version, both spread amongst 3.5 miles. Indeed, a majority of the lap is spent on the oval portion, where you fly along the notoriously steep banking. But it's easy to underestimate the challenge presented to the drivers. The infield portion begins with the scary kinked entry of Turn 1. Not only is it the fastest part of the track, but the transition from the banking to the flat tends to upset the car as you slow it down. There's also the bus stop chicane on the backstretch. Added in the 80s, this is a tricky piece of circuit that punishes a poor exit severely, with it leading back into the latter half of the oval. As you'd expect, the long periods on throttle mean that drafting tends to play a factor in the racing. It also means passing isn't usually too great of an issue if you have the pace to catch someone. The more difficult thing is managing to gap your opponent so that they don't ride in your slipstream once you get by. With half a century of endurance racing collected among these walls, it's not unfair to say that road racers have just as much claim to call Daytona home. Fans who come to watch certainly won't be disappointed by the high speeds and fantastic thrills it invariably provides each year. Well, DJ, we've seen lots of sports car racing here, but unlike what we typically see show up, this is single-class sports car racing. So what's it going to be like with these GT3s?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of a welcome relief to a lot of these drivers that they're not going to have a super fast LMP car flying on by them. But as is the case anytime you come to Daytona to run any sort of sports car, it is going to be about the draft, the whole draft, and nothing but the draft. That is what these drivers are going to be keeping an eye out for today. Their 2 main overtaking opportunities are going to be out of NASCAR 1 and 2 and down into the bus stop, and then out through NASCAR 3 and 4 through the tri-oval and down into that very tricky Turn 1. These GT3s a little bit heavier than the GTEs that we sometimes see out on this track, so getting the cars slowed down will be a little bit more difficult. They're going to have to be a little bit harder on the brake pedal. We've heard some folks talking already early in the pre-race and in the drivers meeting to be careful going into Turn 1. The massive amounts of speed you can get from the toe, it's very, very easy to miss the braking zone there and get the car turned. You've got to be very careful with the inputs both on the brake pedal and on the steering wheel to get that right. The infield section, it's going to be tough as always, especially with these heavier GT cars. It's really a finesse section. I don't see a whole lot of passing going on in there unless we're dealing with sort of a late race desperate maneuver to try to get a pass done in there. But yeah, keep an eye for just what kind of draft trains we can get forming up on these high banks.
I think it'll be a talking point all day long, but let's talk about today's sponsor, which is brought to you by SimMSA. Simulation Motorsports Affinity provides many consulting services, from completely customizing simulators to managing teams, individual drivers, and complete events. They're working hard to bring everyone together at one place to support and promote sim racing internationally. Find out how you can bridge the gap between virtual and real motorsports at SIMMSA.net.
The PRL GT3 series is also brought to you by NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit NinjaTrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance.
Today's broadcast is also proudly sponsored by ButtKicker. ButtKicker products add an incredible immersion and realism to any game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat. Check them out at thebuttkicker.com. As we mentioned just 2 weeks ago when we started this season up, we have 2 championships this time. So we'll start off with the Pro Drivers Championship up at the top of them. I mentioned it, Ferguson still winless after 2 races, but a pair of second places has meant that he is up at the top. Hervias in second is only followed by 1 point back to Goodway. Those two have been very, very close in performance themselves throughout the seasons thus far. Braden Werner is in fourth with William Laster, a bit of a jump back down there in P5, but it's early in the season, much could still change. DJ, what do we have in the AM Drivers Championship?
Well, Joe, in that AM Championship, you can see Barry Cochran there on top with 61 points. Neil Alexander only 6 points back behind him, with Aaron Lewis only 2 points back. So that battle for second, very, very spicy indeed. Drew DeWeese only 3 points back of Lewis, and Chatley only a point back. So 6 points separating second from fifth, and only 12 points separating the top 5.
Now, in the team's championship, Pure Sims really seems to have a bit of a stranglehold right now. 3 points separating the top 2 from FreeM and their esports divisions. SimMSA Esports Black can manage to catch up to them because there's still plenty that they can do in that 14-point gap just to get to second place. But they have to watch behind them. Parabola has a single point to try and overtake them, and you can see pretty big swings here in the team's championship since it is multiple drivers contributing. Why don't you run us down the race details for today's event, though, DJ?
Well, Joe, it is the third of 10 rounds here in this GT3 Sprint Series, and pretty much all the GT3 cars available in the iRacing service are available for these drivers: the McLarens, the Fords, the Beamers, Mercedes, Audi, Ferrari, Lamborghini, and a good mix of all of them out on track today. Now, as I said, this is a Sprint Series. It's only a 40-minute race, so things are going to be fast and furious out on track. The open setups that drivers are allowed to use means that they can kind of tweak and twist their cars a little bit to see what suits them. We may also see some lessening of downforce depending on how quickly you want to be running out on those high banks and take advantage of the draft. 50% fuel limit, though, which means that these drivers will have to take a pit stop. Now, in terms of incidents, remember, this is very, very low. Only 11 points gets you a penalty, and 17 gets you disqualified. But in contrast to that, bonus points out there. You get one for fastest lap, you get one for pole, and you get one for running a clean race with 3 incidents or less.
Yeah, with that bus stop kind of notching up those incident points pretty quickly, I'm afraid that we might see a few drive-thrus throughout today's event. This is Morales, who sits in 12th, but interestingly, recall the points that we showed just a bit ago. Ferguson, Hervias, Goodway was the order, right? Well, right now the top 3 in qualifying: Ferguson, Hervias, Goodway, just in that order. It's interesting how that all shakes out, but it is still tight, and we still have 2 laps left for all 3 of them, which I think Ferguson's just coming across for his 3rd now. And a 43.4 goes even quicker, so he extends himself farther away from the 37.
And Ferguson will be very happy with that as we watch Tremblay crossing over the line, able to improve ever so slightly. But, Joe, I do honestly think around Daytona here today that starting in that pole position, outside of the bonus points you get, I don't think it's the preferred position. The draft is so mega around here that I'd almost prefer to start in that second row and take advantage of the draft when I can get it.
As for our AM fields, Aaron Lewis right now leads that. He's 14th overall. Looks like he's finished up his qualifying as we have just a few seconds left, and then we are actually wrapped up here for a qualifying session. Again, this is solo, so once they run out of time, they cannot complete hot laps. Flores, who sits in 13th, is coming out of NASCAR 4 down towards the Tri-Oval with just enough time to sneak this 3rd lap in. Let's see if he can get himself a little bit higher than this. We're used to seeing him compete for wins. Surprised to see Jorge way down outside the top 10. A 44.4 improves but doesn't give him a position. And I believe that is going to be all of our drivers who can manage to get a lap in here in our qualifying. Love the beauty of this place at night. Having seen it in person especially, it is just an incredible facility to witness. But the drivers really won't have time to focus on that because there will be plenty of action out on track. They are gridding up, so let's go to our starting order for today. Daniel Ferguson starts on the pole with Tyler Havias in second and Lewis Goodway in third. They did not change since I last read that out. William Laster will be on the outside of that row too, though, in fourth with Braden Werner in fifth. Jean-Marc Tremblay starts P6 and J.R. Williams is sitting in seventh. And it's Michael Davies who is in eighth. At one point he was quite high up in the qualifying or in the warm-up, but not so in qualifying here. Morales will start ninth, and Yeager will round out your top 10.
Starting off in 11th will be Gonzalo Cortez, followed by Julio Palacio. Jorge Flores will be 13th, followed by the first of our AM drivers, Aaron Lewis, in 14th. Coney Costello will be starting off in 15th, followed by Mario Jucic in 16th. Rounding up into row 9 is going to be Espinosa and David Flanagan, the second of our AM drivers. Behind them, Brian Vorse starts off 19th with the third AM driver in the field, Kyle Colbert, in 20th.
Now it gets into the thick of the AM field with James LeBlanc in 21st and James Babalis in 22nd. Another pro with Brett Thurman in P23, and back to a few more AMs with Kwok Nin, Neil Alexander, and Barry Cochran. On the inside of the next row in 27th, it's the pro of Christopher Rines. Then Drew Ruiz will be starting 28th, David Morse in 29th, and Mike Richter in 30th.
Spencer Semkowicz will be starting off 31st, followed by Keaton Marcheschi in 32nd. Gary Schilling starts off 33rd, and Jordan Walker will be flanking him in 34th. 35th will be Kenny Rodriguez, followed by Brian Hotham, and then rounding out the back row of the grid, and none of these drivers setting a time as well, Matthew Aubry and Corey Ramsey.
So just a few of them unable to set a time for this race. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of a cleaner one than we had in round one at the start. For those who didn't witness it, it was quite a pileup coming up through the S's at Watkins Glen. Interestingly, they found Mauricio Granda to be at fault for that one. He was given a one race ban essentially for being the cause of a lot of drivers' early ended day, sadly. And I need to check to see. He was supposed to do that at Sebring, which was the round we did not cover at round 2, but I need to double check to see if that has officially been served or if he still needs to apply that as we work our way towards the start-finish line here. I'm curious to see if all your talk about the drafting is going to mean that we will see fuel-saving games from the very early goings.
I certainly think we will, Joe. That's going to be a big thing to play into factor here. Obviously, these cars not going to take tires, but they will be taking fuel, so that's going to be on the front of their mind.
As Ferguson is looking for that first win of the season. He was less than 0.3 of a second both times away from taking the victories at the first two rounds. As the green flag waves, we are off for round 3 of the PRL GT3 Sprint Series. Ferguson has a very strong start. We got a side-by-side battle for third. Way deep on the brakes there. It looks like Lewis Goodway almost got up the inside of Tyler Havias, but it's not meant to be. He will take third away from Laster, though.
Yeah, I thought for sure that Goodway was going to be in problems, but you can see here Laster not happy about getting that position taken away from him, trying to fight back around the outside of the International Horseshoe, but nothing doing. That's in turn going to put him almost into the clutches of Braden Warner as they make their way through the infield.
Good news is everyone was safely through turn 1. That can be a real calamity corner at the start of races, but looks like patience ruled the day as they come through the Western Horseshoe and start to exit the infield portion of the track. This is where the drafting really will start to take effect.
It will indeed, and that turn 6, Joe, a very, very crucial corner. You want to carry as much speed as you can through there and then dive back into the draft with the car in front of you. Everybody's starting to line up here Ferguson still holds the lead with Hervias behind him. We ride on board with Hervias trying to close him down right now.
Had a couple spins coming out of turn 6, Nin and Costello, but both didn't hit anything or anyone, and they are on their way. Look at how close Goodway keeps getting under braking to Hervias. I think that car is mighty on the binders today.
I have to agree with you there, Joe, and it is a different car, obviously, than Hervias is driving. The two leaders right now in Lamborghinis. Goodway, the highest placed Mercedes at the time. That heavy Merc now pokes its way. He's going to try around the outside into turn 1.
Not willing to sit behind them for the time being. As he gets 1, is he going to get 2? Yes. In fact, that almost looked like a bit of a lift from Ferguson. Maybe he is thinking about fuel as he's going to fall in line behind him. Back in the 5th position, Davies is still battling with Werner.
Is indeed. That's Werner on the inside in that Lamborghini, and behind them, that's Jean-Marc Tremblay looking for take a little bit of what he can. It looks like Werner's going to be able to take the position away from Davies, but Davies still struggling to fight back here.
Once again, they go single file as they all pile into the Western Horseshoe. Not seeing anybody really try and poke their nose out. Certainly not the time yet to attempt crazy moves like that. They snake their way across the track coming up to turn 6. And if we see guys like Ferguson and Hervias just sit behind that orange and white Merc, I got a feeling that it was very intentional for them to let him by in turn 1.
I have to agree with you there, Joe, as we look out of the back of that orange Mercedes of Lewis Goodway, looking at Ferguson, trying to close him down a little bit. It looks like Ferguson, yep, little bit of a lift right there, so maybe a little bit of fuel saving, maybe didn't just want to be too aggressive into the bus stop. That's a very tricky place to overtake, so let's see how he handles coming through NASCAR 3 and 4 if he wants to get himself up to the front again.
Ooh, Werner had a horrible exit out of the bus stop this time, and Davies, who he was fighting with into the infield, is around his outside once again. There you can see them. Davies right in the high line, but it's a longer way around the track, and he starts to lose out. He'll dip back into that slipstream. See if this gives him another shot at it in under braking into turn 1. Following them is Jean-Marc Tremblay still, and Tremblay actually gains quite a bit on the binders on those two, but they're going to stay in order as we look behind them. That's Morales who overtakes Williams, but not quite. Oh, Williams spins the tires, and he has to give it up.
Does indeed. And Joe, just a note that our leaders there did swap over, so Ferguson moved himself back up to the lead, so fuel saving not completely on the front of his mind right on board as we continue to follow this battle, riding on board with J.R. Williams.
Yeah, Williams, who was trying to challenge on Morales, has now got to play defender because Cortez and Yeager are right up his gearbox.
Yeah, it really seems like in the early stages of this race, Joe, that if you try to make a move and fail, it's going to put you right into the clutches of the cars behind. All of these leaders very close to one another on track. Nobody really being able to separate too far.
Certainly not. We seem to have had a problem with Gary Schilling. I'm not sure what caused it, but he's taken a tow in the pits. There you can see him there. So if the timing and scoring looks a little bit off for a moment, that is just trying to get him sorted out. Love this shot, looking down the backstretch from our drone cam as they head out of the bus stop one more time. And Ferguson actually half a second ahead of Lewis Goodway. Let's see if that changes by the time they hit turn 1.
There you can see that is a little far back, I think, to take full advantage of the draft, but we have seen just how strong Goodway is on the brakes in that AMG Mercedes, so maybe he's got a little something else for the Lamborghini. They cross over the timing and scoring line. He's going to hold it back, I think, at this point.
Interesting to note that Goodway really had the gearing almost locked into perfection. It was riding the red rev limiter the entire way up until the braking zone, so seems like if he gets any more speed than that, he's going to be bouncing off that limiter as they almost bounce off the curbs there, coming off of the International Horseshoe, certainly taking a lot of the corner exit.
Well, Joe, these GT3 cars can take a bit of a beating. You wouldn't only see that if you were running, say, the LMP2s around here, but those GT3s can really, really get onto it. But they're going to want to be careful. There is a very, very fine line there in between the curb and the grass, and if you even get a millimeter or two of your tire onto that grass, it will send you spinning around.
As all this has been going on, our battle for the lead in the AM race has been quite close. Lewis is being chased by Babalis, who actually nearly gets into the back of him, coming onto the oval. He was just almost up the tailpipe of that 18, and now he's going to get a nice big toe off of him as well. As you see him start to gain, he pops out to the right side. This is going to be on the outside on the entry into the corner, but it'll switch back into the bus stop. So what does Lewis do? Does he fight hard? No, he's going to back out early.
I think that's a good move there from Aaron Lewis. He knows that even though this is a 40-minute race, there's still about a half an hour to go, and there's plenty of time. And there, Joe, you were talking about it, just taking all of that inside curbing out of the bus stop.
Great exit there for the 86. As you can see the battle right behind them between Flanagan and Colbert. And I think Goodway just overtook Ferguson once again for the top spot as he takes the fastest lap of the race. Across the line on the high side, Colbert, can he manage to overtake? No, he's actually going to open the doors. It gets a little squirrely. Brett Thurman, unfortunately, not liking that, and he bails, eventually having to take to the outside of turn one.
Very, very scary handling there from Colbert. That car just does not seem settled at all.
Well, I'm glad everybody came away from it clean, though, as they now run through the infield portion. Some side-by-side through the infield, though, between Cortez and Yeager. It looks like Gonzalo is going to come out the winner of that one. Let's get a replay. This is actually quite impressive. They went side-by-side through the kink. Not often you manage to see drivers do this. Yeah, here they come through. Oh, it was a mistake into the International Horseshoe, and neither was willing to give up the ghost.
And Joe, these two have been just fighting tooth and nail over the last couple of laps. Really, really good, respectful battle. Very impressive that they're both able to hold it on. There you can see Gonzalo being able to hold that braking line on the inside into the second part of the horseshoe. And now, oh, it looks like there's been a problem for Yeager.
Oh, they went side by side through the bus stop yet again, and Palacio's loving that. Juchik, not so much. He's boxed in. He has nowhere to go now, but he is going to get a spot over Palacio, it appears. In fact, Palacio's getting a bit of a Daytona stock car experience as he gets just basically hung out to dry by the draft train up at the front of it now. It's between Yeager and Cortez once again, with Gonzalo to the inside, braking hard. Look at the flames spouting out of the back of that McLaren, but it's not enough, even though it's visually beautiful, to get him that 10th spot.
It's not, and they all file back into single file again here, but ooh, here comes Yeager trying to make a mistake to be had out of Cortez. Doesn't exactly get it done. He's going to lose a little bit of time. I think Juchik now is going to be licking his chops, thinking he may have an opportunity after that sort of alternate line there run by Yeager.
What a contrast to the top of the field, where they were very politely kind of letting each other take the point, whereas this group is looking frantic. I'm hoping it doesn't come to tears, though, them fighting this hard, and they're only 10 minutes in.
I got to agree with you there, Joe. And that line that we saw through the second horseshoe out of Yeager, that was a very aggressive line. I think it caught Juchik off a little bit. You can see the gap that's reemerged there. He had to sort of check up, get back onto the binders. That checked up everybody else behind him.
We're going to glance at our leaders once again. Goodway currently at the top spot. Herbias running second. Ferguson, fascinatingly, is slotted into third. And I don't think he's been up at the front recently. But they are towing along their own train. They've got Laster, Werner, and Davies with them. Oh, Tremblay. Tremblay just got a slowdown penalty behind them. He was with that train, and now he is suddenly dropping like a rock.
Oh, there you can see, Joe, he just took a little bit too much of that inside curb, it looks like, and you can get a slowdown penalty from doing that, gaining an unfair advantage out on track. And this has completely and totally lost him out from the rest of the group. He is way down the order.
If we go back to that battle we were watching with Jaeger, it's side by side into turn one once again. And even though we didn't see it, Jaeger was just all over the place on the brakes. Once again, he struggles to get the grip, accelerating this time, and that's going to give the spot to Juchik, who gets himself into 11th.
That's really good heads-up driving there from Juchik, just waiting for the sort of erratic driving there from Jaeger to come back to bite him. Very calmly moved his way forward, and now he is up into 12th place. He's going to set his eyes up the road to Cortez. Cortez, meanwhile, has Jean-Marc Tremblay, who we saw get that slowdown directly in front of him.
And that tells you just how much that can cost you at a track like this, as we watch from Tremblay to Cortez chasing him. Cortez about a second and a half up from that group that we're watching, including Juchik, Jaeger, Palacio, and those ilk. So it actually looks like it was a good thing that Gonzalo got himself ahead of them all, because now that they've been fighting amongst each other, he's pulled a pretty decent gap.
Yeah, and he's going to be very happy about that. He's not going to be over the moon in the fact that he doesn't really have too many drafting buddies around him. Tremblay starting to eke out a little bit of an advantage, and that's going to hurt him, but he is at least able to pick up some of it and stay out of this fearsome battle behind him.
And second place with Hervias still riding behind Goodway. He's got a big run, but he lifts. So definitely thinking farther ahead. And in fact, almost everybody behind them lifts very early as well. Drivers who definitely would have had an opportunity to try to overtake into that first corner didn't even give it a go.
Yeah, Joe, and it looked like Hervias had just the slightest bit of a bobble coming through the tri-oval. I think he may have dipped his left side tires down ever so slightly past the yellow line, and that may have blunted just a little bit of momentum and stopped him from making any sort of move that he wanted to. Clearly has the speed here on Goodway, but very hesitant to make a move here, much rather just sitting back and waiting for the race to come to him.
Kind of don't blame him, because I keep popping my eyes back to that group fighting for 11th, and I said it before, but it looks entirely different to this. It's still Juchik up at the front, but he had another challenge from Jaeger through turns 1 and 2. Then enter the International Horseshoe is where he really got it under control. Jaeger actually falling back a little bit off of turn 6. This is going to give Palacio a good shot at things. Let's see if that McLaren can make the overtake, or does he want to make the overtake? No, he backs down.
Yeah, and I think that run there, that potential one for Palacio was set up, and it's something good to talk about. There is a surface change on the track. Oh, big mess up there from Jaeger coming through the bus stop.
Oh, and the one that caught out the worst appears to be Espinoza, who I think took a little bit of a cut course because of it. Yeah, you can see him trying to pull off the racing line. He's going to have to let all of them go. It was like a domino effect amongst them. Yeah, and he just had to take evasive action. It was either take the cut course penalty or get into the back of the car ahead.
That's an unfortunate thing there for Espinosa. You can see him trundling along. But, Joe, back up to that battle. Jaeger is getting absolutely swamped. That's Palacio and Flores by him, and it looks like Brian Vorse is going to have some of that as well.
Interesting stuff. So Palacio, can he manage to break away the same way that Juchik is starting to do? Seems like they're bleeding drivers the more they fight with one another. Also, fans who were watching the left side of the screen may have noticed that Werner dropped down the order. He's taken his pit stop. The 329 is essentially done with his fuel stop and ready to go to the finish of this race.
It's a bit of an interesting call from Warner. However, where he's put himself out in traffic, you can see it. He's right behind Spencer Semkowicz right now, only about 3.5 seconds down the road. Now, if he can gain that back up and start taking advantage of the draft here soon, be able to get effects of that around 1.8 seconds, he'll be fine. He'll be able to tow himself along very easily, but the more he runs out by himself like this, he's going to be running slower than the likes of Hervias and Ferguson.
Okay, so does anybody respond, or does nobody take the bait on this one? Goodway still leading, as he's one of our drivers, our two drivers to have taken a win alongside Hervias, who rides behind him. Look at them all gain yet again, but we've seen this story before. And Tyler it does the same thing. Yep, he's just going to back out of it. However, it looks like, one of the teammates trying to join up at the front. That's Davies. And in fact, Davies might get there. He's almost getting to second place, going the long way around into turn 1. He's got to fight with Tyler to his left side. He's going to have the desired line down into the International Horseshoe. And with a little bit of overlap, this battle is certainly still on. There he goes. Wow. That was, what, 4 positions in just a couple corners?
Joe, you asked me before this race started if that draft was going to be effective. I think we just proved right there that it is. Oh my goodness gracious, Michael Davies like a freight train coming up through the field.
That was a savvy move, and that puts him right in touch with his teammate Lewis Goodway. So now they can start to work together on this. And I wonder if that'll change the complexion of this fight at the front. By the way, speaking of fights at the front, our leader in the AM class, Aaron Lewis, or former leader, I should say, has just pitted in that number 18, so he's taking his service.
And Joe, I was thinking about this a little bit before Davies made that move. Hold on, we've had a problem back in the field.
That's our driver who was leading. At least last we saw, the 86 Babalis has suddenly spun off of the Western Horseshoe. We're going to take a look at it. This just happened now. Yeah, you'll see it here. And this was definitely an unforced error. Nobody around to really cause this.
Looks like he just gets off a little bit into the marbles there and touches that outside grass and spins him around. That's a slightly off-camber corner there, Joe. Very tricky to get the braking right, but we've got pit stops here in the front.
And it's looking very, once again, NASCAR-esque, as it's a team that's in together, which includes Ferguson, along with the likes of Laster and Hervias. There you can see them all hitting their stalls, looking for the fuel to be topped up, and they'll be back out, able to work with one another in the slipstream, although Hervias is out much quicker than the other 2 teammates.
Indeed.
Big wreck right beside them. Oh my goodness. That was Costello in the number 8. That was one of the biggest wrecks I've seen in a while into turn 1.
Ooh, just gets caught in the back there, and that sends him spinning right into the wall. Heavy front impact.
Just smashes that car up. Unfortunately, he had to take a tow. It was just too bent up to continue. So, interesting note, the 18 of Werner, who we saw pit a little bit early, is actually out ahead of Hervias, but not by a lot.
Yeah, he is directly in front of him. The gap's only about 0.3 of a second for Werner, but that early pit stop paying dividends here. We'll have to see what happens. I believe these guys are teammates as well.
All right, as they hit the high banks one more time, we're waiting for Goodway and Davies to come in. Morales almost losing that draft, and they've definitely dropped J.R. Williams back there in P4 as we watch the drivers who have pitted work their way down towards the bus stop. Hervias going to get by Werner. Up at the front, Goodway ahead of Davies. And they helped Morales catch them, who was their last teammate of this group. So they must have just let off enough to make sure that that last Merc can stay with it.
And I have to say, Joe, I'm a little bit surprised here at some of the team tactics in play. I would have thought for sure that Davies would have hopped out to the lead here and given Lewis Goodway a chance to save some fuel, but that's not the case. Goodway continues to lead. So we'll have to see what the strategy here is from these SimMSA drivers.
We've just hit halfway, so they've still got a few more minutes before they need to come in for their scheduled stop. And don't forget about J.R. Williams back there. I thought he had lost the draft, but it looks like it's about 1.2, so there's still an outside shot that he could start to gain enough to catch those top 3. I think I see a few more in. Looks like Marcheschi is pitting, so is Richter and Morse. So a bit of varied strategy here today.
Yeah, it's not normally what we see from this series, Joe. It's normally a situation where everybody sort of seems to have a groupthink mentality about it, but lots of differing strategy playing out, making for a very, very interesting race.
Not expecting these drivers to come in this time by, but obviously we've been shocked by a few other front runners, so let's keep the cameras on the 74. No, he's not ducking down. He's staying out. Let's see if some of those farther back might try it. Julio Palacio, who's chasing Babelis, who's a lap down car, doesn't come in, but Flores comes out in without his teammate. That is fascinating.
He may have some spotters in the back of the field telling him where it is, but that looks like, I believe that's Espinosa behind him as well. That is another teammate, so that may be the joint strategy call there, as well as Thurman.
Indeed, you're right. So it looks like they were in communication, made the call, and they're all in. They're not going to beat our first set of pitters out. They're well past already just as they start exiting and try to go across the cones. Ooh, fastest lap for Ferguson in the meantime. The plot thickens.
Yeah, Joe, I've been keeping an eye on all of that. It looks like the leaders were able to pull out a just very small gap the previous lap, but I think that Ferguson and Warner and those folks, they were able to keep this nice and tight on them, so this is not a surefire thing that they are going to be able to keep their lead, these leading SimMSA drivers right now.
Ferguson, who still runs in 15th, but is third in line of those who have pitted. Narvaez currently holds that as he's been able to overtake Warner, but he's still giving the slipstream to that 329. So I suspect that that fight is not necessarily over, especially if he's jumped by Ferguson, who could tow him back up a lot easier as well. Let's see, where are our leaders? They're going to go on by one more time. We're going to check on Juchik in the meantime. This is a fight for 6 between two drivers who have not stopped, and definitely not on the same team. Tremblay and Mario go on past that pit exit, but doesn't look like Jean-Marc was trying anything this time, despite how close he was running up to the first corner.
Yeah, just not really thinking it to get it going there. Only about 17 minutes to go, just under it. So we are getting to the tail end of the window for these stoppers. If they're going to try to come in, this is going to be the point where strategy plays into top of mind.
But the front, coming out of the Western Horseshoe Goodway, still trails or trails along the likes of Davies and Morales. J.R. Williams, he's about 2 seconds back now, it looks like, so I guess it's not looking as likely that he'll stay with this top group, because it was about 1 second before, so he's been losing ground bit by bit. As they come down towards the bus stop. 2/3 through the way in this race. Is this the marker that finally gives the top 3 the go to come on in? Watch from Davies' perspective, seeing if Goodway ducks onto the lane. If he does, you can expect both Davies and Morales to follow suit, but no, they are going to continue past one more lap.
They are indeed, and Joe, I can report that for fans of Jean-Marc Tremblay, he has had a big off coming into the bus stop. Lots oodles and oodles of time, just spun it up, looks like he locked up the rear tires and headed into the tire barriers.
So looking through, I see that our highest AM driver is actually up to 9th. Some of that is due to pit stops. It's Kyle Colbert, and actually he just pitted now. Now, this will be telling, because looking down, the highest driver to have pitted among the AMs is Mike Richter, and I think he's much too far back. I think Colbert is going to come out the leader once these cycle through.
I think he is as well. Looking back at Richter, he is just now coming through the middle part of NASCAR 3 and 4. So I think Colbert's already up and away. That is going to give the position back. Oh, no, excuse me. That was 1 and 2. He was not even at the bus stop yet.
Yeah, he's still got a ways to go, so easily in the hands of the 133. Now, he's not leading right now, but again, that's before a few other AMs have pitted. I say that, and I look, and actually, James LeBlanc is the only AM that hasn't pitted in front of him, so he's going to hand that over soon. So there's really only one car that we're waiting on for Kyle to retake his lead, and by 10 seconds, I should say, over the next nearest AM driver. So it's looking very comfy for the 133 as we glance at the 007, who should be getting close to his pit window closing too.
We're going to check back in here on that Goodway Davies Morales train again. Looks like they're not coming in.
No, Morales pitted. He's the only one of that group, though. He does have the likes of J.R. Williams joining him, so he won't be completely alone. Cortez also pitting. This might be the end of the pit window for those who couldn't save as well. Juchik pits. Yeager, Palacio. This is some of those drivers that were in that big tussle we saw earlier. So that leaves essentially Goodway and Davies, who seem to have been playing it cool at the front.
And I really want to commend here Lewis Goodway's ability to save some fuel. Very, very impressive. He's been running in the lead in dirty air this entire time. Now that streaking by on the right side of your screen, that is Hervias right there. So just barely in front, not a whole heck of a lot in front of those boys that just came out of the pits.
But Diego is in and amongst Ferguson and Laster here. And in fact, you can see Laster ducking to the inside. And he is almost past. Oh, be careful, boys. Through the infield portion, side by side yet again. And it's going to go to the inside for Laster down into the Western Horseshoe. This should be job done, and it is.
Oh. Very good driving there between Morales and Laster to keep everything nice and clean. Now they get themselves through that tricky turn 6. Good on the brakes there for Morales. He's now going to hopefully be able to take up some of the draft of that Lamborghini and see if he can't get something done into the bus stop.
Now, Morales was, what did we say, about 2 seconds behind our leaders. So I think this is still going to be quite close between these pure sim guys and our SimMSA guys who are pitting now. Goodway and Davies have hit their marks, or will hit their marks in just a moment. There you see them coming down towards their pit stalls, and this is going to be crucial. Hervias just out of the bus stop.
There you can see him on your screen coming through NASCAR 3 right now. Goodway and Davies at rest in the box.
As they accelerate towards the tri-oval. Stops are done, and they're rolling. Hervias still has speed and crosses the line. Now, they moved the cone back, don't forget, to quite a ways here in recent times, so they can't accelerate until here, and there they go. Speed a little bit in favor of Hervias, but he doesn't have the track position. Does Goodway defend? He can't get down soon enough, tries to cut him off, but there's a car there. Has to leave him space. Hervias, though, can't make it through. Goodway retains the lead.
And an absolute perfect split between the drivers and the teammates there. Goodway, Hervias, Davies, and Warner. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've only got 10 minutes to go here, Joe, but it's going to be a battle to the end.
And for those thinking that this is an F1 thing where whoever gets up in front has the win, no way. This is Daytona, and I think this is going to be a knockout, drag down, whatever the phrase is, battle between these four. Goodway, Hervias, Davies, and Werner essentially have this to themselves.
They do indeed, and I would not be surprised, though, Joe, if we see maybe a little bit of gamesmanship happening here. Remember that if you can be behind on the last lap coming out of the bus stop, you're going to get the advantage of the draft and see if you can time that slingshot right. So that may be something that is in the back of these drivers' heads. The other thing they're going to have to keep in mind, Keaton Marcheschi is just 2.5 seconds up the road from these guys, and David Morse is only about 8 seconds up the road, so they're going to encounter some lap traffic before this is over.
Now, Tyler didn't seem to have the best exit coming out of the bus stop, but you can see he is gaining. He doesn't try and take the pass in the meantime. I was wondering if he did it intentionally just to see what kind of slipstream he can get, or if that really was an error on his part.
Well, we will have to keep an eye and maybe ask him in post-race interviews if that was the case. There's Marcheschi getting out of the way of this absolutely line-astern battle for P1.
So they all swing it off of the International Horseshoe. So a little bit of a slide there from Goodway. So he's definitely still fighting hard and pushing to see if he can stretch this away from his rivals that are trailing him. And don't forget, Goodway was not our pole sitter in this race. That was Ferguson, who's trying his best to catch up to this group. So if we're going by qualifying pace, Ferguson should be the fastest, but this is the end of the race. They're on worn tires and they're in different makes of cars, so we don't know if his pace has lessened towards the end of these 18 some odd laps.
There we ride on board with Ferguson. Now that gap up to the lead is about 1.9 seconds that you can see, but crucially his gap up to Braden Warner in 4th place is only about a second as they go into the braking zone of the bus stop. That's enough to take advantage of the draft, and rest assured that Ferguson does know that. There, you can see it starting to come down.
And we saw from out the windshield that that front group was definitely weaving across the backstretch. Goodway essentially held low and then drifted back to the racing line. So I don't think he trusts this whole situation, and we are going to have a pass for the lead because Hervias is not lifting this time. He's going to go the long way around down into the first corner, but the job is not done. Sending it in deep. Goodway is going to deny him, and in fact, both the SimMSA cars are going to stay to the inside because this will be second place taken away from that Lambo. Michael Davies has to fight for it, braking hard down into the International Horseshoe. He doesn't have the desired line, and I don't think he's got it. Yes, he has to slot in behind that 37.
Thought about maybe trying to make it too wide there through the kink, but Hervias able to fight him off there. He is still all over the back of that Lamborghini, though, not letting it go at all. But Joe, while that has been happening, Ferguson is now right up behind Warner.
And the group grows. It is now to 5. Laster is in there. He's back by a half a second. I expect he's going to catch them this time on the oval portions as they pick up the pace along the high banking here at Daytona with 7 minutes to go. Just an update. We don't need to go there, but Colbert still leads in our AM class by about 13 seconds with really no challenge. He just needs to cruise home from here as once again Goodway holding to the inside on his run up to the bus stop.
He has been driving a very, very heads-up defensive line, Joe. When I watched him come out of turn 6 and on to NASCAR 1, he actually pushed the car all the way almost near the barrier of that high bank and then drove the car down the hill, just trying to break any sort of draft he could from Hervias. But here comes Hervias. He's going to start to poke his nose. A little bit of weaving from all the leaders here. Oh, and there comes Davies to the outside.
3 wide, looking down into the first corner. Davies trying to make Tyler think twice about things, and he might be able to get this, but he goes very, very wide on the entry to the corner, and that costs him as Ferguson nearly makes contact coming off the exit. There's just enough space to go too wide through that set of S's, and I think Davies is going to be able to hold him off. So twice we've seen attempts, and twice the positions stayed exactly as they are. Will that be the same the rest of this race?
Well, we'll have to see. The biggest thing out of this is Davies is really proving as the rear gunner here for Lewis Goodway. Hervias can't. Ooh, very late move there for Ferguson. He's trying to go around the outside. Doesn't exactly get it done, but he's able to at least keep up in line with Michael Davies.
I think Davies was the one making the move on Hervias there down into the Western Horseshoe. It didn't pan out, but he certainly had a little bit of a look on the 37 once again. As we come on to NASCAR 1 and 2, let's see if they hold low, trying to stay in the tire tracks of the 74. Goodway's been holding on that double yellow line. Yes, once again, he likes that one. And this time, Hervias almost takes a look down into the bus stop. That is a sketchy move to attempt. Behind him, that actually checks up Michael Davies, and he's going to go side by side with Ferguson, who gets a fantastic run.
And Ferguson was having a look to the inside of Davies to begin with down the bus stop, but you can see just what that checkup did to Davies is that's Ferguson behind. It looks like Braden Warner's going to say, I want a little bit of that too.
Just a few laps to go. Ferguson trying to make his way back up to the top. He doesn't want another second place. He wants to take a victory here. Werner on the inside of Davies, who loses positions, might lose another one. He tries to take it down deep, and he does, and chops off at the apex of one. That'll solidify fourth.
Well, all right, Joe, this now creates for a different dynamic up front. I was talking about it on the last lap. Davies was a little bit able to serve as Goodway's rear gunner there, taking the fight to Hervias and making him look in the rearview mirror as he tried to make the pass going forward. But now we have three drivers from three different teams running 1, 2, 3, so it is very much every man for himself up at the top.
And I think we're going to be 2 to go at the line. If it's less than 3.5 minutes, they'll only have 2 laps left to settle this. Ferguson, with 0.8 of a second to make up, has really got to hustle and use every ounce of the draft if he hopes to challenge for the victory here today. Are we going to have another less than half a second gap for the finish and Ferguson on the poor end of that? You can see from his windscreen it looks mighty that of what he has to close down, but it's not impossible.
No, it's not, and it's Daytona, Joe. Anything can happen. There you see Hervias getting very, very close. Oh!
And who was that?
I believe that was David Morse.
Goodway runs into him, and unfortunately, he looks slow as Michael Davies is able to absolutely fly past. I looked away because I saw Yeager have a problem right at the wrong time. Yeah, that was Babalis who tried to pull back on track at the wrong time. And Davies leads. Laster is now in second. Goodway sits in third. Ferguson falls to fourth out of that. I'm not sure what happened to the 676 in that exchange.
I think that was just a massive checkup that got absolutely everybody a little bit cockeyed there as they came out of the bus stop. But oh my goodness gracious, Lewis Goodway now just holding on for his dear life. The front end of that Mercedes very damaged.
Well, unfortunately for James, the fans of Goodway probably screaming, "Give us Babalis," after that move. Hopefully he isn't crucified by the stewards for that one, as 2 minutes left on the clock. And we are going to get the white flag next time by, and suddenly things are shaken all around.
They are indeed. The whole complexion of the front of this field, it now looks like it's a two-way fight between Davies and Laster.
Laster, who before was way far back in that group, suddenly has a real shot at the win. Michael Davies as well. Neither of them have had a victory yet this season. As they approach the bus stop, Williams backs it up. Is he trying to see what kind of launch he can get off the corner? If he is, it's working well because he gets a fantastic one.
He does indeed, very much closing up behind the back of that Mercedes. He's going to bring it up to the high side. It is the longer way around, but he will be able to carry more momentum up there. He's now going to drive the car down the hill ever so slightly, try to pick up a little bit more draft from Davies as they go through the tri-oval. This is going to be, I believe, the white flag. There they go.
It is, but Laster doesn't make the move. Davies still leads. Ferguson's now coming back at them. He's only 0.9 of a second behind. Is there enough pace in that Lambo to try and finally get that win? As they come down into the International Horseshoe, Davies leads them in with a half-second gap. Back to Laster. 0.7 now to Ferguson. 0.2 in just those couple set of corners. He's coming.
He is coming like a train with a full head of steam. We ride on board there with Ferguson. He knows what's at stake. What he's got to do is get the perfect exit out of turn 6 and just tuck up behind the draft and make sure his right foot is cemented to the floor.
Coming up to turn 6, this is where it's going to come down to strategy. Oh, and a bobble from Laster. He goes wide coming out of turn 6. That may cost Ferguson the slipstream he needs to fight for this.
It may indeed. Davies now having a big gap of almost a second up the road. That battle, it looks like Ferguson is firmly planted in P2, but I don't think that's going to be enough to pull him in.
Davies may have lucked out after all was said and done. As he comes through the bus stop, he just needs to be solid. It's 0.7. I think that's way too far back for Ferguson to have hope here. The irony is this might be the biggest gap he's had in all of his 2 second places that he's seen so far. Out of NASCAR 3 and 4, the gap is coming down. but it will not be enough. Michael Davies is going to take the win as Ferguson is second for the third race in a row, this time 4 tenths. No, he winds up 3 tenths of a second yet again for Ferguson, away from our leader. Incredible. The 75, I'm sure, is absolutely shouting for joy after that one. It looks like we had a close one for 9th and 10th as Juchik barely beat out Cortez. Where's our AM leader? Colbert coming to the line. What a well-earned victory as this quiet race produced a stunning gap of about 14 seconds over the next car as Colbert takes max points in today's AM race. Just 22 left on the lead lap when all is said and done. So as we watch the 75 burn it down, we're going to take a quick break here on the Global Sim Racing channel. We'll come back with the unofficial results as well as driver interviews. Welcome back to Daytona International Speedway. This is one for the classics reel. I could not finish that we saw in round 3 today for the PRL GT3 Sprint Series. Michael Davies coming away with the win, starting from 8th on the grid. Had a little bit of luck on his side, of course, but it was ahead of the man who has been second in every single race, each of them less than 4 tenths of a second to the leader at the end, but he will still lead the points championship after today. William Laster did get a podium, and it was awful close for him as well, as he was right beside Ferguson at the line. Tyler Hivias finished in P4, with Lewis Goodway, who looked the most likely to take this victory, suddenly finds his race ruined with just a couple laps to go, with some lap traffic pulling back in front of him. He finishes 5th, with Morales in P6. Braden Werner was P7, with J.R. Williams in 8th. Juchik was 9th, and Cortez rounds out your top 10.
Coming home in 11th was Jorge Flores, followed by Julio Palacio and Brett Thurman. Kyle Colbert, a commanding victory in that AM class. He was 14th overall. Second in AM, Neil Alexander and Barry Cochran. That is your AM class podium. Spencer Semkowicz was 17th overall, followed by James LeBlond, Mike Richter, and Drew DeWeese to round out your top 20.
21st went to Jordan Walker with Brian Vorst, the last one on the lead lap in 22nd. Espinoza, Morse, Marcheschi, Aubrey, and Hotham were all a lap down to 27th position. Yeager, who I mentioned, had a wreck at the end, unfortunately DNF'd for the 28th. Schilling finished with 29th. Nin as well in 30th. From there on down, you get to DNFs, including Babalis, who has already admitted his mistake there in the text chat post-race. We have our winner ready to talk to us, Michael Davies. I'm not sure who's more shocked, probably you or us, at that victory.
I'm probably the exact same as what you guys are. I had to make a move around the outside into turn one, just trying to get some track position because I had a feeling that the Pure Sims guys would be going shorter on fuel, so yeah, it just went from there.
You had an incredible move at one point as well, overtaking about 4 cars, heading down into turn 1 and through the next couple corners. How in the world did you make that one stick?
I'll be honest, I don't even know myself. I'm only on a single monitor, so I can only see what's in front of me. So it's even harder in that sense, but when you've got good people around you and who you can actually trust to hold their line, and yeah, it's made easier by having other people who can do their job as well as me doing my own.
It gave us quite a finish here, but we always expected that there would be some drafting games going on. So after the pit stops finished and you saw you were in such a big group, what was going through your mind, and were you in contact with Goodway trying to work out a strategy?
It was each for our own at that point. I was having to try and find a way past Tyler. I'm sure Daniel will say the same when he comes to speak to you, that he'd be trying to find a way past us. It's racing at the end of the day, and you've got to get to the front somehow. And luckily it worked out for me today. But on the bad note, like 3 of the front runners had bad luck in the bus stop. So looks like I played my cards right.
Certainly. Well, before you go, who helped make this SimMSA esports car a victor today?
The guys at Craig's Setup Shop, like giving us great setups every week to work with. And just Diego and Lewis for putting in practice before the race to make everything work.
Great stuff. That was Michael Davies, who took the win today, ahead of who unfortunately is becoming something of a Mr. Bridesmaid, Daniel Ferguson, who finished second as DJ has caught up with him.
Daniel, 3 races down, 3 second places. This one a little bit more chaotic, I think, near the end than your other ones, though.
I think that's an understatement there. 9 cars all within 5 seconds in the end, was it?
Yeah, pretty much. It was. There wasn't a whole lot in between you guys.
Yeah, we had a game plan going into it. We were gonna obviously try and eke out as many laps with fuel, and then Lewis, I think, threw a thorn in that plan from the get-go.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that plan. It looked like a lot of you guys, really dove down as early, a lot earlier than some of the SimMSA drivers up front. When you saw that they were staying out, did that cause you to worry a little bit, or were you going, okay, I think we still got this?
We did go into kind of a panic mode after we saw they had essentially a clear track. We sent Braden through the pits, and he said he had a small gap, but a bit of traffic. We weren't sure if we were going to lose a lot of time to the traffic, which luckily we didn't. And we were able to bring the fight to them at the end.
Well, bring the fight you did. Now, obviously, we head to another big draft train track in Road America next time. Is this the one you can maybe break the duck for the season, or are you just kind of looking at this as going, you know what, I'm in the lead of the championship, that's okay?
Well, got to play the long game, but it would be nice to get a win in there at least once, considering I've got every pole so far. Yeah. Looking forward to the battle with SimMSA throughout the season.
Well, we are excited to watch it as well. And Daniel, anybody you'd like to thank for your second place here tonight?
I'd like to thank everyone at Pure Sims for helping out with making the sets for me, Tyler, Braden, and William. And then also Freem UK for providing some of the gear for us. Craig Setup Shop as well. And yeah. Looking forward to the future. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Daniel. That was your second place finisher tonight, Daniel Ferguson. Joe?
That's going to be it for our broadcast. But before we go, we want to thank the sponsors as well. Of course, starting with Simulation Motorsports Affinity. If you want to get involved with the world of sim racing, check out SIMMSA.net. And of course, if you want to check out one of our other longtime sponsors here in the PRL, NinjaTrader, they are at NinjaTrader.com. And finally, for all of your sim rig needs, go to thebuttkicker.com and check out Buttkicker products to see if they can have something to help your sense of immersion in racing. Thanks goes out to the companies that provide the software and hardware for our broadcast listed here on your screen. And additional thanks go to June Lalonde, who provides our wonderful music. See the screen for how to get hold of more of her great work. And a special congratulations to June, who just got engaged to her partner recently. Thanks to the team today, DJ, Sean, and Dougie. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. Or you can check out our social media through the outlets listed at the bottom of the screen. And if you'd like to support the channel, check out our merchandise store at gsrc.storeenvy.com. Link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next race that we cover will be Road America, May 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern, but the series heads off to Lime Rock Park for the next round. We also have upcoming races for other series listed on the screen, so check those out and mark them down on your calendar. And then in just a few moments' time, the Porsche Owners Club goes to Interlagos at 10:45 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.